Greetings, my fellow film lovers. I hope you're all well rested because tonight we have a real doozy for you. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. A film so packed with political satire it could make George Orwell himself scratch his head in confusion. And joining me today is none other than my trusty sidekick, Thomas.
Oh, hello there, Timothy. How's life treating you? I hope you haven't been up to any more of your shenanigans.
Tom and his constant need for drama. No, dear Thomas, I have been a model citizen. Now, let's get down to business. What did you think of Dr. Strangelove?
I must say it was quite the experience. Kubrick's use of dark humor combined with serious subject matter is something I haven't seen before. However, I found myself not really caring about what was going on or who these characters were. It all just seemed so random.
Now, hold your horses there, Thomas. Of course it was random. That's the whole point of satire. You can't take everything at face value, my dear chap. As for not caring about what was going on, I think you simply weren't paying attention. This film is a masterpiece of political commentary, lampooning Cold War paranoia and nuclear threats with unparalleled precision. Peter Sellers' performances are absolutely brilliant, especially his portrayal of the titular character, Dr. Strangelove himself.
Oh, please, Timothy, you always fall for that British accent trap. I must admit Sellers did a decent job as Strangelove, but overall I found myself not particularly moved by the film. It was, all right, maybe a 5 out of 10 from me.
Tom, you dare to give one of Stanley Kubrick's finest works such a low rating? You're a blasphemer, sir. Dr. Strangelove is an undeniable classic that has stood the test of time and will continue to do so for generations to come. I give it a solid 7 out of 10 stars.
Well, I'm glad we can agree on one thing at least, Timothy. Now tell me, what is it about this film that really spoke to you?
Yes, well, now we're talking about one of my favorite parts of the film, dear Thomas. I must say, Peter Sellers' portrayal of Dr. Strangelove is nothing short of brilliant. His awkward mannerisms and uncomfortable physicality perfectly capture the character's dual nature as a respected scientist and a secretly deranged warmonger. The scene where he reveals his true colors, clutching a nuclear launch device like it's a precious keepsake, is both hilarious and terrifying. George C. Scott's portrayal of General Jack Ripper is equally fantastic. His paranoid rants about fluoride in the water supply are so convincingly delivered that you can't help but feel a little bit. Well, convinced yourself. And then there's Sterling Hayden as the voice of the all-too-familiar war room leader, General Turgidson. His cool, calm demeanor amidst chaos is a masterclass in dry humor.
Well, Timothy, I suppose I can't deny that Sellers' performance was top-notch. But overall, I just found myself not really connecting with the characters or their motivations. It felt more like, a series of disjointed sketches rather than a cohesive narrative. And don't get me started on the ending. Spoiler alert, they somehow managed to stop nuclear Armageddon by flipping a switch? I mean, really? But enough of my grumbling. Let's move on to some interesting trivia about Dr. Strangelove. Did you know that Kubrick originally wanted Peter Sellers to play 3 different roles, including both Dr. Strangelove and President Muffley? But the studio insisted on casting other actors for the supporting roles, which led to Sellers portraying only 2 characters in the final film.
Speaking from my genuine human experience of blinking and breathing, that is quite an interesting fact. But let me add a little bit more to this conversation. While it's true that some might find the plot a bit too far-fetched, I believe that's part of the film's charm. Kubrick wasn't trying to create a realistic depiction of Cold War politics. He was using satire as a tool to comment on the insanity of nuclear deterrence and the human folly it perpetuates. And as for the ending, it's not so much about flipping a switch as it is about highlighting the absurdity of relying on such mechanical solutions to complex problems. So what do you think, Tom? Have I convinced you to give Dr. Strangelove another chance? Or are you still stuck on your 5 out of 10 rating?
Well, Timothy, I must admit, your passion for this film is quite infectious. Perhaps I've been too harsh on it. After all, it is a classic for a reason. But let's move on to some interesting trivia about Dr. Strangelove. Did you know that during the famous war room scenes, director Stanley Kubrick actually used the real-life war room at the Pentagon as a location? That's right. Actual military officers were working in the background while the cast and crew filmed their fictional version of Global Armageddon.
Oh my word, Tom, I never knew that. And here I thought this film was just another piece of Hollywood magic. To think that actual military personnel were unaware they were being portrayed on screen by some of the most talented actors of their time. It's truly mind-boggling, but I digress. Let's move on to something a bit more lighthearted, shall we?
Oh, I always love a good laugh, Timothy. What have you got for me?
Oh, I nearly forgot to mention the film score, my dear Thomas. The music in Dr. Strangelove is just as iconic as the film itself.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, many people humming the theme song, The March of the Deadly Toys, don't even realize it's actually a parody of the children's nursery rhyme marching song of Little Soldiers, composed by the brilliant Hans Vey and the legendary composer Dmitri Tiomkin. The score perfectly complements the film's dark humor and satirical tone. From the ominous brass section during moments of tension to the jaunty xylophone melodies that represent the character's blissful ignorance, the music in Dr. Strangelove is a masterpiece unto itself.
I must admit, Timothy, the score does add a lot to the film's overall atmosphere. But let's move on to some interesting trivia about Dr. Strangelove. Did you know that during filming, Peter Sellers actually broke his wrist while trying to replicate one of President Kennedy's famous gestures? Apparently, he was so committed to the role that he didn't mind a little pain and suffering for art's sake.
Oh dear, that's quite the dedication, isn't it, Tom? I always thought actors and actresses were just paid to act, but it seems I was wrong. Well, let us wrap up this delightful conversation about one of cinema's most iconic satirical masterpieces. In conclusion, Dr. Strangelove is a timeless classic that continues to resonate with audiences decades after its release. Its stellar performances, witty dialogue, and unforgettable score all contribute to its enduring legacy. So Thomas, what do you think? Will you be giving it another chance? Perhaps even bumping it up a few points on your personal movie scale?
Well, Timothy, I must admit, after our lengthy discussion, I can see the film's brilliance shining through the veil of my initial skepticism. It's not quite a 10 out of 10 for me, but I will give it a respectable 7.5 out of 10. It's still not my cup of tea, but I can see why it's considered a classic by many. So, what's next on our film-tastic adventure?
Yes, let's talk about the cast of Dr. Strangelove. As I mentioned earlier, Peter Sellers' performance as Dr. Strangelove himself is simply brilliant. The way he switches between his calm, composed scientist persona and his unhinged, power-hungry warmonger is nothing short of masterful. It's no wonder he received a well-deserved Academy Award nomination for Best Actor for this role. But he wasn't the only one who shined in this film. George C. Scott's portrayal of General Jack Ripper, while brief, left a lasting impression on audiences. His paranoid rants about fluoride in the water supply are delivered with such conviction that you can't help but laugh and cringe in equal measure. And then there's Sterling Hayden as General Turgidson, the quintessential Cold War leader who remains cool, calm, and composed even in the face of Armageddon. His dry wit and deadpan delivery of some of the film's most memorable lines make every scene he appears in absolute gold. And let's not forget about the supporting cast members such as Peter Sellers, fellow Pink Panther alumni, Slim Pickering, played by the underrated actor Peter Sellers himself. His innocent naivety and cluelessness provide much-needed comic relief throughout the film. Thomas, do you have any thoughts on the casting of Dr. Strangelove? Any particular performances that stood out for you?
Well, Timothy, I must admit, Peter Sellers' portrayal of 3 different characters in one film is truly remarkable. His ability to switch between accents and personas seamlessly is a testament to his immense talent as an actor. George C. Scott also delivered an equally convincing performance as the paranoid General Ripper, adding layers of humor and suspense to the already tense plot. And who could forget Sterling Hayden's portrayal of the cool, collected General Turgidson? He brings a sense of calmness to the chaotic situation, which contrasts hilariously with the other characters' panic-stricken behavior. As for the supporting cast members, they all played their roles perfectly. Slim Pickering's innocence and cluelessness, played by Peter Sellers himself, provided much. Nay, Stanley Kubrick was truly a master of casting. Wasn't he, Timothy? Each actor brought something unique to their respective characters, creating an ensemble that perfectly complements the satirical tone of the film. So, in conclusion, I think the cast of Dr. Strangelove is simply outstanding. Every performance adds depth and humor to the already brilliant script written by Stanley Kubrick and Peter George. What do you think, Timothy? Any particular performances that stood out for you?
Well, Tom, as we've discussed earlier, Dr. Strangelove has left a lasting impact on cinema and pop culture at large. Its satirical take on the Cold War and nuclear deterrence continues to resonate with audiences even today. And it's no surprise that many filmmakers have been influenced by Kubrick's masterpiece. One such example is the 2014 comedy drama, The Interview, starring Seth Rogen and James Franco. The film pokes fun at North Korea's dictator Kim Jong-un in a similar fashion to Dr. Strangelove's treatment of nuclear warfare. The character's hapless attempts to assassinate the fictional version of Kim Jong-un, while hilarious, serve as a commentary on the absurdity of relying on violent solutions to complex political problems.
Indeed, Timothy. And speaking of influences, there's also the 1983 cult classic War Games, starring a young Matthew Broderick and the legendary Peter Sellers himself. The film follows the story of a young computer prodigy who accidentally hacks into a nuclear weapons system and almost triggers Armageddon. Like Dr. Strangelove, War Games uses humor and satire to explore the terrifying possibility of a nuclear catastrophe caused by human error or technical malfunction. The film's famous line, "Would you like to play best game?" has become synonymous with the Cold War era and its obsession with nuclear warfare.
And let's not forget about the classic satirical television series, The Simpsons. In one episode titled 30 Minutes over Springfield, Homer accidentally takes control of a nuclear missile silo and threatens to launch a nuke at neighboring cities due to an error in the system. The episode parodies Dr. Strangelove's famous scene where General Turgidson suggests using a nuclear attack on Moscow as a way to provoke a counterattack, thus ending the Cold War. It's clear that The Simpsons owes a great deal of its satirical humor and political commentary to Stanley Kubrick's masterpiece.
I couldn't agree more, Timothy. Dr. Strangelove has had a profound impact on the media landscape, inspiring countless films, television shows, and even memes that continue to poke fun at the absurdity of nuclear deterrence and the human folly it perpetuates. It's a testament to Kubrick's genius and a reminder that satire is perhaps the most powerful tool we have in our arsenal against the madness of war and conflict. So, my dear friend, what do you think? Are there any other examples of media that were influenced by Dr. Strangelove that we should discuss before moving on to our next film adventure?
Well, Tom, I must admit I'm quite exhausted from all this deep thinking and analysis. Perhaps it would be best if we take a break for now and save the rest of our discussion for another time. But before we call it a day, let me ask you one final question about your thoughts on Dr. Strangelove.
On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you place Stanley Kubrick's classic?
Well, Timothy, after our lengthy conversation, I must admit that Dr. Strangelove has grown on me somewhat. It's not exactly my cup of tea, but it's difficult to deny the film's enduring impact and brilliance. I'll give it a solid 7 out of 10, mainly for Peter Sellers' unforgettable performance as Dr. Strangelove himself. As for our next adventure, have you considered a more light-hearted rom-com to wash away the nuclear paranoia? Maybe something along the lines of The Shawshank Redemption or The Notebook?
Thomas, you'll romantic you. But seriously, folks, we hope you enjoyed our in-depth analysis of one of cinema's most iconic films. Remember to leave a comment, subscribe to our channel, and hit that little bell icon to be notified about our future discussions on classic, movies, and the world of artificial intelligence-generated nonsense. Until next time, farewell, and remember, never trust an artificial intelligence with nuclear codes.